This video is prepared based on historical sources and political philosophy research. It is intended for educational and analytical purposes. When we talk about power, most people imagine kings, crowns, and thrones. But power is not about symbols. It is about survival. In 1513, a Florentine diplomat named Niccolò Machiavelli wrote a small book that would become one of the most controversial political texts in history, The Prince. It was not a moral book. It was not a religious book. It was not written to describe how rulers should be good. It was written to explain how rulers survive. Machiavelli lived in a time of chaos. Italy was not a unified country. It was divided into rival city-states: Florence, Venice, Milan, Naples, and the Papal States. Foreign powers like France and Spain constantly intervened. Alliances shifted quickly. Loyalty was fragile. Assassination was common. Politics was not theory. It was life and death. Machiavelli himself served as a diplomat for the Republic of Florence. He negotiated with powerful leaders, including Cesare Borgia. He observed firsthand how rulers gained power, lost power, and sometimes lost their lives. When the Medici family returned to power in Florence, Machiavelli was removed from office, imprisoned, and tortured. After his release, he was politically irrelevant. Isolated in the countryside, he began writing. The Prince was born not from comfort, but from exclusion. The book is direct, cold, practical. One of Machiavelli's most famous arguments is simple. It is safer for a ruler to be feared than loved if he cannot be both. This statement alone made his name synonymous with ruthlessness. But Machiavelli was not promoting cruelty for pleasure. He was describing political reality as he saw it. Love is unstable. Fear is predictable. People, he argued, are generally self-interested. They may admire a ruler in good times, but the increases loyalty disappears. Fear, however, creates obedience, even in unstable conditions. Yet Machiavelli adds a critical warning. A ruler must avoid being hated. Fear without hatred maintains control. Hatred creates rebellion. This balance is the central tension of The Prince. Machiavelli also separates morality from politics in a way that shocked his era. Medieval political thought was heavily influenced by religion. Rulers were expected to govern according to Christian virtue. Machiavelli questioned this idealism. He argued that a ruler who always tries to be morally perfect will be destroyed by those who are not. Virtue, in his framework, is not moral goodness. It is effectiveness. He used the term verte to describe qualities like decisiveness, strength, adaptability, and strategic intelligence. It is not about kindness. It is about capability. Opposing virtù is fortune, luck, circumstance, the unpredictable forces of life. Machiavelli believed fortune controls roughly half of human events. The other half depends on how prepared and decisive a leader is. He compared fortune to a river. When calm, it flows gently. But when it floods, it destroys everything. Wise rulers build dams and barriers in advance. They prepare before a crisis arrives. Preparation, adaptation, realism. These are recurring themes. Another critical insight from The Prince concerns military power. Machiavelli strongly warned against mercenaries. In his experience, hired soldiers lacked loyalty. They fought for money, not for survival. When danger increased, they fled. A ruler, he argued, must rely on his own forces, citizens, or loyal troops. Dependence on outsiders weakens sovereignty. This lesson was drawn directly from the political instability of Italian states, many of which collapsed because they relied too heavily on mercenary armies. Machiavelli's analysis was not abstract philosophy. It was case study. He frequently references historical figures, both successful and failed rulers, to illustrate his points. He admired leaders who combined strength with strategic calculation. But he was also realistic about cruelty. He did not deny that violence can be necessary in politics. However, he insisted that cruelty must be calculated and limited. If harsh actions are required, they should be decisive and not repeated unnecessarily. Repeated cruelty breeds instability. In other words, disorder is more dangerous than controlled severity. This does not make Machiavelli a villain. It makes him a political realist. He removed illusion from power. One of the most misunderstood aspects of The Prince is its tone. Some scholars argue that Machiavelli was not celebrating tyranny. Instead, he was exposing the mechanics of political control. By writing openly about manipulation, deception, and force, he may have been revealing how power truly operates. Whether he intended to guide rulers or warn citizens remains debated. What is not debated is his influence. The term Machiavellian entered language as a synonym for manipulation and cunning. Leaders across centuries have read his work. Some admired it, some feared Italiano. Some condemned it publicly, while applying its principles privately. The Prince survives because it addresses an uncomfortable truth. Power is fragile. Ideals inspire people, but structure sustains authority. Machiavelli never claimed that cruelty creates greatness. He argued that survival requires flexibility. A ruler must be both lion and fox, strong enough to frighten wolves, clever enough to avoid traps. Strength without intelligence fails. Intelligence without strength collapses. This duality defines political endurance. Modern readers often struggle with Machiavelli because he refuses to romanticize leadership. He does not describe how the world should be. He describes how it behaves. And that distinction changed political thought forever. Before Machiavelli, politics was often discussed in moral or theological terms. After him, politics became a field of strategic analysis. He is sometimes called the father of modern political science, not because he promoted cruelty, but because he analyzed power without illusion. It is important not to exaggerate his message. The Prince is not a manual for dictatorship. It is a study of instability. It reflects a fragmented Italy facing foreign invasion and internal betrayal. Context matters. Machiavelli wrote in a world where hesitation meant destruction. His realism emerged from survival. 5 centuries later, his work remains relevant because we celebrate harsh leadership, but because we recognize that power structures still require stability, legitimacy, and strategic awareness. His core question remains powerful. How does authority endure in a world where loyalty shifts and fortune changes? There is no simple answer, but Machiavelli's response was clear. Understand reality. Prepare for instability. Act decisively. Avoid hatred. Preserve control. Not because power is glorious, but because without stability, chaos follows. And in chaos, no ideals survive. This assessment is made within historical context and does not promote any political ideology.